Story from the well. Today is a little bit different. If you've been here for the past couple years, we've been walking through John, one verse at a time, and at times it seems painstakingly slow, but it's needed, especially when Jesus begins to talk. You know, those red sections in your Bible, we will slow way down, and we've been 3 weeks on John 14, verse 15 through 24, and we could stay there for another 3 weeks, but this week we're not putting it on pause. We're going to see John come out in a new way. See, something about John is he wants you, his goal is to get his readers, which were Gentiles and Jews in the Gentile world, and people like you and me, to believe in Jesus. And not just believe in Jesus, but to realize the new life you have. And we've got stories he brings up. You got Nicodemus. You've got the prostitute who was drug out in front of Jesus. You've got the official and his son. You got these people who are brought up in the Gospel of John who end up receiving Jesus. And we will see in John 17 here in a couple months how they become one with God, unified with God. And Jesus tells us, John reveals to us that their unity with God means they're united with us. And not just under the name Midtown or the church you go to, but because of who lives in you, because of what you are becoming, the image and the likeness of the Son of God. And this is what we've been uncovering. And every one of you here has a story. Jean will be sharing her story with us here in a minute. And your story, see, when I grew up, I didn't really have the ups and downs, you know, the big moments, the climactic moments in my story, in my testimony, as some of you would call it. And this is not what we're looking for in Jean, although you'll find her story very compelling. But it's the unity with God and how that instills hope in hopeless situations, joy in situations where you in this world cannot find joy. In your story, even you children this morning, God has laid out a journey for you, a journey that I know and hope and pray that you will find the Lord if you haven't found him already. And he will turn you into a new person, a new image. And that image is just like his son, Jesus Christ. And so I'm going to ask Jean, if you would, come on up. And let me open us in prayer. And this will be the message today, the story of God inside of Jean. The reason we call it the story from the well is John 4. I encourage you to go and read that. The Samaritan woman at the well, Jesus pulls the story out of her, reveals that he's the Messiah to her, and then there's this joy and excitement inside of her that propels her to the city which she came from, the village she came from, and to tell people who she was, to tease them to come out and know Jesus for themselves. And that is my hope today, is that just through your life and through what God has done inside of you, that you will continue to ignite the faith that we have for Jesus. Father God, we give you this morning, we give you the next several minutes, however long this takes, Father, to hear Jean's story, the story of what you've done inside of her. May it be an encouragement to us, and may we know your love and the hope that is found only in you. Peter calls it a living hope that Jean has. It's been a big encouragement to me and many in this church. We love you, Father, in your son's name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, I heard that AC click in a way that it should not have, so give me 1 second. Trust me.
Please.
1 minute. You'll be glad I did that. Mark, when people start sweating, check that fuse box again. It's the 60 amp. It's the biggest one. Why it pops, I don't know. If you're an electrician,
Come on.
I was hoping it would never happen in the middle of a Sunday service, but unfortunately it did. great way to break up the story. Okay, Gene, many of us know you. In fact, we got a few people here that are here because of you. But would you tell us just a little bit about yourself, who you are, and just whatever you would like to share about yourself?
Oh, gosh. Brain dead.
The questions get harder.
Oh, well, I feel like everybody knows me here, but I've been here 4 years, and I'm semi-retired, and I just have gotten to the point in my life where I feel really, really blessed. I have a lot of friends. I enjoy going and doing. I enjoy helping out at the church. I've been in Florida almost all my life, so I grew up mostly in the Orlando area and then migrated over here in the late 80s. So
Migrated? Okay.
from Orlando.
I thought only birds migrated. You told me when we went through this a few weeks ago that this was actually a difficult process for you, and not necessarily because of the story, but because you left it behind. Tell us a little bit about that.
Leaving my past behind, you mean?
You mentioned at the cross.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got some would call it not so Christian-like past. And it wasn't until he asked me to think about doing my testimony, and I found it very difficult to do, and I started wondering why. You know, I've always shared my past very easily. And I came to realize that I had finally let it go totally and left it at the cross, so to speak. And I know Greg says, what do you mean by when you left it at the cross? And I said that was a term I'd heard in church I was years ago, and some of it was let go, let God, lay it at the cross, a lot to do with celebrate recovery. It made me think of things like that. But I didn't realize how I'd finally left it there. And I realized just how free I was now, and how difficult it was for me to dig it up again.
Glad I could help you with that.
Yeah, buddy.
What do you think I can do to help? So tell me about how you came to know Jesus, your early perception of him, at what age?
Well, when I was in junior high school, I had a great childhood, but I wasn't raised in the church. We were, what do you call it, Creasters. Christmas and Easter, we went to church. So, but in junior high, I made my best friend and her family. They went to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. You know what I mean, I'm sure. Back in the day, and I started going with them when I was about 14, and when I was 16. I was saved, and I could still remember the feeling to the day, because many times I thought, oh, I should go down, you know, when they do the altar call, and I just never could. But this particular day, when I was 16, it was just a strong pull. I think I could have tried to hang on to the banister, and I'd have still went. Anyway, I felt really pulled by the Lord to go down, so I did. And I was baptized the following Sunday. Back then, you know, this was a fiery Southern Baptist church, so they didn't mentor teens back then the way they do now. So I'm there every Sunday, and it just seemed like the majority of the Sundays before the sermon was over, good old Reverend Spears would be waving that Bible in the air, screaming, y'all ain't nothing but a bunch of sinners, and y'all going to hell. And after listening to this for I don't know, another year, I kept thinking, gee, I thought I was saved, because I just didn't get any mentoring or learning or anything. So all I had coming at me was, gee, I thought I was saved, but he keeps telling me I'm going to hell. So that was my start in the Christian world.
So what was your perception of God at about that age?
He wasn't very nice. He was very wrathful. Truly, that I think my perception was there was absolutely nothing I could do to please him, because I don't ever remember hearing the word grace when I was a teenager. So I just truly felt that he was a mean, wrathful God, and it didn't matter what I did, I wasn't going to please him. So definitely thought I needed to get a good work ethic going there, but I didn't think that was going to work either.
Interesting. So you told me you were married twice. Tell us about your first marriage.
I got married at the end of the summer after I graduated from high school. Got married in my church there, and we married about a year and a half, and I had my first son. He was a junior, but we called him Dickie. And then 14 months later, I had my daughter, Paula. And we didn't go to church anymore. That kind of happened really fast. We just quit going. And I was married 14 years, and I'd have to say the first 7 years were pretty good, And but then my husband started drinking some, and because when I got married, he didn't drink, okay, and then it's just like the second half of our marriage, it really escalated, and I got to the point, I'm like, can't beat him, join him. So I started drinking entirely too much, and didn't always work out well, but we had friends, everybody drank, we partied, and we did. And then he had basically a couple of affairs, and we separated for several months. And back then my attitude was, well, what's good for the goose, good for the gander. So, no, I wasn't any better. So after a few months, we decided to give it one more try, because our kids were like, I think 11 and 12 then. We got back together, and 3 or 4 months later, I got pregnant with our third child. So it's like huge age difference here, but that's okay too. And anyway, he tried. He wasn't very good at giving up alcohol, so it didn't take. When I was 7 months pregnant on Christmas Day, he moved out and moved in with his girlfriend and left me and the kids, and me 7 months pregnant. And as soon as the baby was born, my youngest, we called him Christopher, we got divorced, and that was the end of the first marriage.
And tell us a little bit about the second marriage.
Okay, about 3 or 4 years later, I got married again. Totally different kind of person, but he was quite a bit younger than me, but he was very, very good to me, very good to me. I had felt really beaten down by my first husband. I was verbally abused a lot, beaten down. And he was very good to me, and it was great, a year or two into it, and then we were both working hard, and by this time all I had was Christopher at home. And I just started knowing something wasn't right, but it was a busy time of the year where I worked, and I worked a lot of hours and blah, blah, blah. But one day I sat down, I said, I know something's going on, I just don't know what it is. Something's not right. What's wrong? And he was very honest with me. He had went and got himself addicted to crack. I'm like, holy moly woly. And no, I didn't do drugs. Thank you, Lord. But I didn't know what to do with that. You know, I said I lived with an alcoholic a long time, and that's like a real slow fade financially. With a drug addict, I found you go from the bills are paid to 1 month later, checks are bouncing, you have zero money, and you don't know what you're going to do. So anyway, my daughter had married, and she was living over here in Melbourne, and she begged me to bring Christopher and move over here and move in with her. I could find a job over here and get things going, you know, so I didn't know what else to do, so I did. And also, my husband's mother, my mother-in-law, lived here in Melbourne, too. And in the meantime, she went and got him and brought him over here to her house. And I will say this, he didn't want to lose his family. He wanted to get into rehab so bad. And if you don't have a lot of money, it's not as easy as it sounds. But with a lot of work between his mother and I helped some too, we did get him in a good rehab. And when he got out, we got back together, and it seemed to, I felt really blessed. It really, it worked. It worked for him. And so life kind of got nice and smooth again for a while. And stayed that way for a while anyway. So, but then I guess couple years after he'd been clean, he came home one day. I was home sick from work, and which is something that very seldom ever happened. But he came through the front door in the middle of the afternoon, and he was as pale as a ghost, and my first thought was, oh gosh, he's using drugs again, but it wasn't that. People had called around trying to find me. I still don't know who called, but I wasn't at work, and the phone.
So this is before the marriage is ended?
Oh yeah, this is when my son.
Yeah, yeah, and so we'll get there. So your marriage, did it end shortly after he became clean, or how did that marriage dissolve?
He did. We were married, I think, 10, 12 years, but yeah. The last, he did have one more episode towards the end of our marriage, which was the cause of the end of our marriage. He had another round of drugs, and I said, no can do again.
And so what is your perception of God during these marriages and as they fall apart?
I really had none, really. I did not rely on God for anything. If I thought about him, it would be only in the way of he's punishing me for something, you know, something I'm doing. But I very seldom thought of God. I never, you know, I must say, truly, the way my life was going, 2 marriages, the whole 9 yards, I think I put it all on me. I always felt like, what if I'm not doing something right? I took the responsibility for it.
So tell us, you had 3 children.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about both, or all 3, their names, and just a little bit about them.
Well, my first son was Dickie. Of course, the firstborn is always special, but they're all special, don't get me wrong. But he was he was a terror up until he was an opposite, till he was a teen, and then he was just such a good kid, and we were really close, and he went to school, got out of school, and chose construction and carpentry like his dad had done. And then my daughter, they were only 14 months apart, Paula, and she was like the opposite. She was such a good young child, but then when she hits her teens, When the school called that there was a problem, I knew it wasn't my son, it was my daughter. Okay, my daughter's been in a fight. That's just the way it was, you know. So she gave me a run for the money in her teens, but she's an adult now with four grown kids of her own, and I love her to death. She's a good person. And then my youngest son, of course, he was the surprise package. It ended up with the age difference. I felt the majority of his life like I was raising an only child, and we were extremely close, and yeah.
December 22nd is a day you'll never forget.
Yep.
Talk to us about your first son and that day.
Okay, it was December 22nd, 88. Yeah, because this year is 28 years. When as I started to tell earlier, my husband came in from work and he was white as a sheet, and he came home to tell me that Dickie had been killed in a car accident. And, you know, you just, you can't take it in is the only way I could. It was just inconceivable. I mean, it's hard to explain. Yeah, it's like you're in a fog. It just can't be, but it was 3 days before Christmas, and you're in a fog. I just can't believe this, you know, and go and do everything that has to be taken care of, because we have to go over to the Orlando area where he lived to take care of all this stuff, and anyway, and come back, and it's Christmas. I have a young grandson, and I have Christopher, you know, who's 7, looking very forward to Christmas, and my whole family gets together, the kid's father included, and we managed to get through Christmas Day, but I went back to work really, really, really fast. I couldn't deal. And in my mind, I thought I could outrun it because I couldn't deal with it. And it amazed me to see people laughing, smiling, doing normal things, because the only way I know how to describe it is I honestly felt like the whole world should have just stopped, because mine had. It was very, very hard, but I went back to work. 10 months later, I couldn't run any longer. I had a nervous breakdown, so I went into work one day and just announced I'm quitting. You know, I'm sorry, gotta quit. I told my boss, I said, I can't get over this. You know, I just, and he looked at me so odd, and I said, I just can't get over it, and I can't come to work any day. I don't want to talk to people, you know. And he said, Jean, he said, you will never get over this. You will only learn how to live with it. But he was very good. He fully understood. So, you know, I quit. Went home, announced to my husband, oh, wait, by the way, I quit my job today. But he picked up the slack. He definitely did. But him and his mother, my mother-in-law, were so worried about me. They drugged me to Circles of Care because I was content to lay. I could have slept 24 hours a day if people would leave me alone. That's just. But I went to Circles of Care where they got me some therapy and started me on antidepressants, which I did not realize would be a 20-some-year adventure, you know. I'd take myself off over the 20 years every now and then, maybe for a month or so. I couldn't function. I couldn't. You know, as much as life went on and, you know, I stepped forward, I still had major, major depression.
And you mentioned at this point your perception of God. You moved to some Eastern religions.
Yes. I once again instantly thought well, I'm sure this has got to be my fault because God's not happy with me. Those were about the only time I ever thought of God, was when he was being wrathful to me, because he was not in my life every day. And I wanted answers, and I delved into all the Eastern religions, and I just read everything I could get my hands on. I had a need to believe. That's the only way I can describe it, a need to believe in reincarnation, because I had a need to believe that I was going to be able to, possibly before I die, recognize my son somewhere else. I just really was knee-deep in the Eastern religions, and I found a New Age church here in Melbourne that I went to for a couple years, and they preached Jesus from the pulpit. But the thing I remember most about the church was they had psychic fairs and the readers and the palm readers, and I've had a past life regression, just searching for my son again. That's all it was. So I was knee-deep in the Eastern religions for a long time.
Probably about a decade, if not longer. Because June of 2000, you told me you went on a vacation with your daughter.
Yes.
And
Yes.
did some readings
Yes.
on that vacation.
Yes.
Tell us about that vacation.
Okay. My Christopher, he was 19 years old now. He was grown and working, and he had a girlfriend. Just found out his girlfriend was pregnant. Nobody was happy, but that's another story. My daughter was living in Missouri with the grandkids. She had 4 kids by now. And I had been out at Christmas to spend Christmas with them. But then I wanted to go out again. I called her and said, if it was okay, I'd come out for a week's vacation. I think it was the second week of June it was. And my daughter's whole adult life has also been a train wreck, but she had a very good example to follow. And so I went out there, and she had absorbed some of my thoughts and views about the Eastern religions and philosophies and stuff like that. So she had met somebody out there we were both excited to go to. He was a reader of this or that. We had lunch with him and the whole 9 yards. But while I'm out there, I think I'm flying back Sunday, and it's Friday night. And we're all out on her deck, the grandkids and us, just talking and having a good time. And I get a phone call from my Christopher's best friend, and he calls me Mama, because when his dad threw him out, 14, 15, he lived with us for a couple of years. And he said, I said, Alex, what's wrong? And he said, Chris has been in a bad car wreck. And I said, well, where is he? What? And he just kept saying, Mama, it's bad. Mama, it's bad. And I'm like, where are you? Are you at the hospital? He said, yes. And I said, well, what are they saying? And he said, they won't let me see him. They won't tell me anything. I said, get off the phone. Let me call the hospital. So I called the hospital. My daughter's losing it by now, and I feel like I'm holding it together decently. And I call the hospital, and they won't tell me a thing except that I need to get here as soon as possible. I said, I'm in Missouri. And they said, well, that's all we can tell you over the phone, is you need to get here as soon as possible. So I got off the phone. She had already talked to her other half, and she was going to fly back with me. So next was the airlines, trying to arrange that, and got through that. Could not get out that night, period, but we got on a flight at 6 o'clock the next morning, and we flew back here to Melbourne. And by now ex-mother-in-law, but we stayed dear friends till she died, picked us up at the airport and took us to the hospital. And I had called his father, who lived way out on the other side of Sanford, and asked him the night before if he would get to the hospital, and told him what had happened. And I say he'd been sober many, many, many years by now. So I just wanted somebody with Christopher. So he went, and so we got to the hospital around noon, and I just remember going in, and the doctors, before they let us go back in, the nurses and all, tried their best to explain to us that there was basically no hope. He was on life support, and I'm still, I'm just not buying it. You know, been here, done that. With every fiber of my being, I just knew somehow he was going to be okay. I just knew it. This could not be happening again. And so anyway, I finally got in the room. I dropped my purse, and I picked up his hand and leaned over the bed. He was not conscious. He was on life support, you know. And I said, "Christopher, Mommy's here." And he squeezed my hand. And they said, "Oh, no, he didn't. It was this whatever jerk, whatever, you know." No false hope. They didn't want to give us any false hope. So anyway, I didn't buy it, but it was rough, and my daughter was a mess, and I just kept thinking, you know, I honestly could not believe that he was. I just thought somehow, some way, I remember in my mind, somehow I just knew I could will him to be okay. You know, this wasn't going to happen. But later that night, I got 5 minutes alone with him because it was so, you didn't get a lot of time in there. And I went in and I grabbed his hand, you know, and I told him, I leaned over and I said, "Christopher," I said, "Son, you can't leave. You can't leave. You've got your girlfriend, your baby's due in 2 or 3 weeks." And I said, "I can't do this." His girlfriend had a little 2-year-old already that Christopher just loved to death. And I just told him, I said, "You can't go. I can't do it. What am I supposed to do?" I said, "You can't leave. You just can't." And anyway, you know, he squeezed my hand one more time before this was all over with, but of course they said it wasn't. But anyway, the next morning, the same old, it seemed like we were in the hospital for a week solid, but actually we were only there 48 hours, if not quite that much. But the next evening, the same thing. I got 5 minutes or so alone, you know, by myself, and went back in, and I thought about what I'd said to him all day long, you know, and I took his hand and leaned over, and I said, "Christopher, if you've got to go, I understand. I will do my best to take care of Jody and the kids." And I said, "I don't want you to leave, but if you have to go, just know that I will do my best." And he was gone within the hour. And I often regretted over the next few weeks saying those words, because what I would have given just to go back in and just pick up his hand. But he was gone, and because he was on full life support, they had to wait. One of the doctors said he was gone, but they said they had to wait 8 more hours, and a totally different doctor had to come in and validate that he was truly gone because he was on life support. So it wasn't till the next morning that, you know, they officially said he was gone. But you go in, and I say my goodbyes, and you just know he was gone. He was not there. And me and his father had decided we did donate his organs. And but I had a bunch of friends, what little family, I don't have much family, but his father's family had all been there, the 48 hours, as many around that could come in. And my daughter left, I said, you just go with your father. And I had a couple of friends, people I worked for, that were going to help me take care of making funeral arrangements. And so we did all that and took care of all that. And then I just remember thinking, when I stopped long enough to think that, gosh, what a horrible person I am, because, the wrathful God, I can't tell you, I shook my fist at him, why? Am I that bad? That's the only credence I ever gave to God was, I always felt it was all my fault. If I hadn't been that bad, he wouldn't have done this to me. And, but, life goes on. 17 days later, his son was born, and they were, of course, were with me. I took her to the hospital and watched my grandson being born, and she named him Chris. They had already decided on his name. My Christopher, big Christopher, did not want a junior, but Christopher was okay, so it was Christopher Michael, because his name was Christopher Daniel, so it was Christopher. And we called him Little Chris, which some of you have seen my little, almost 6'5", 250-pound little Chris now. But at that point in time, he was the light. He was the light in my life. That was it. Because with him, I felt like I could touch a little piece of my Christopher. He was just it for me. So a couple of months later, I, through the opportunity of some close friends and people I worked for, I was able to buy a home. I thought, okay, let's do it. I'm going to take on the 2-year-old that little Chris. And so I bought a home, we painted and did all this, we all moved in, whole 9 yards, and I was just, work, gonna do it, could take care of them. And we lived in the new house 2 weeks, and she told me that her and the kids were moving out, and she was moving in with her new boyfriend. Well, like I said, I'm sorry. But that was just like, whoa. So I could no longer see my little Chris every day. And my daughter, she was still in Missouri. She was livid about this. And she said, Mom, I'm going to start calling her. I need the baby for a little while. It's like we're passing this piece of my son around. It was horrible, but I could feel what she meant. She wanted to be with the baby a while too. So she kept bugging her. And finally relented, and I said, I'll fly him out to you, sis, because even though he wouldn't be with me, I knew he was better with my daughter, and that was at least better. So it was a whirlwind weekend. I took him out, flew him out to my daughter Saturday morning, flew home Sunday evening, and left him out there, and it was, supposed to be for a couple of weeks, but actually my daughter raised him the first 9 years of his life, and now he's back with my daughter, bless her heart. And so when I came home from Missouri, my little Christopher wasn't even in town anymore, and it was just like, for the first time, I was truly, truly, truly alone, and I felt so alone. Just alone. I worked, this is just me, I just didn't know what to do with myself. I worked. I've always worked. It's just I don't like to work. I worked 6 days a week, but after I took him to Missouri, but every night I'd come home and start drinking. And I know the first year I was alone, I would get drunk every single night of the week. And I'm talking about wall grabbing, commode hugging drunk, okay, before I fell in bed. And I never missed a day of work. I'd get up the next morning, go do it, come home, do it all over again. It had been about a year. And I remember I got up. I was sitting on my back porch, and I was just sobbing uncontrollably. And I got up, and I walked inside, and I just fell across my bed. And I remember I just looked up, and I screamed. I said, God, why won't you help me? And I heard him audibly. He said, you won't let me. And I wish I could say that was the turning moment in my life, but it was not. And I got back up and went back out and finished the job and fell into bed drunk. And this kept up for close to 2 more years. And the people nobody knew that I was this bad every night of the week. Nobody knew, nobody, during the day, I had your normal life during the day, but nobody knew, but I did. So it'd been almost 3 years, and my daughter had moved back here with the grandkids, and that was a blessing. I did get to see them, and we interacted, but I would still go home every night and do my thing. And so she had started cleaning homes, which is what I did. And somebody I worked for, the next door neighbor, who had a lovely Christian woman, Donna, she had come over when I lost my Christopher and talked to me and everything, and I'm like, yeah, no, nice lady, I'm not, But she had asked me then, could I clean for her? And I said, I have no time, but my daughter is getting hers going if you'd like to meet her. And she said, yeah. So that's how my daughter came to work for her. So it's probably, like I say, about 3 years after, and she starts to work for Donna. And I don't know, she'd been working for a year or 2 or however long, but my daughter's life, like I say, was also a train wreck. And you could see it in the way she carried herself and her face. And Donna knew this. And one day, I get a phone call in the middle of the afternoon. I'm at work. And it's my daughter. And she's crying. And I said, are you all right? And she said, yes, I'm fine. And I'm like, well, then what are you crying? Where are you? And she says, I'm working. I'm at Donna's. I said, well, what's going on? And she said, oh, Mama, she said, I came through the door this morning, and Donna looked at me and said, Paula, sit down. You have got to give this up to the Lord. And she said, Mama, Donna talked to me, and she said, she brought me to the Lord, is how she put it. And she said, I remember she was crying, and she said, oh, Mom, I feel like the weight of the world has been lifted off my shoulders. And I said, I am so happy, honey. And she said, Mom, I want to start going to church. She said, always we. Can we start going to church? And I remember saying to her, I said, oh, Lord, yes, honey. I said, Lord knows I need to. And I said, you pick a church and we'll go. And I said, but don't forget, there's a lot of churches out there. I'm starting to have flashbacks of my first church. And I'm like, don't want my daughter in. I don't want me in it, okay? So I said, there's plenty of churches, you pick, we'll go till we find one we like. So we go the first week, and it was wonderful. And the pastor and everybody was so nice, And week 2, I said, on Saturday, I called my daughter, okay, hon, have you picked one for this week where we're going? And she's like, you think we could go back to that one? I really liked it. And I said, I did too. Yeah, we'll go back there. So anyway, that's where we stuck. And I have to say, wow, it just didn't take too long. And I just started feeling this hope is the only way I could describe it. And hearing about a loving God that I knew nothing about, I'm like, can this possibly be that God isn't this awful, wrathful God? Is there a loving God? And so I really started learning, and they were really good. I know the pastor got me a mentor in the church, which happened to me. Mark Linger's mother, I had a one-on-one mentor who took me through like a 6-week thing, once a week of Christianity 101. But this is what I needed. I had nothing when I was saved, and nothing. And they were very in tune to this, and they really got me on what I would call a solid foundation. I was just so grateful, and just loved the church, got involved, did this, did that, and was there several years. And then we had a new pastor that took over, and within a month, a month or two, all I can say is God said, "Run, Gene, run." And I ran. But he didn't tell me where to run to, and I had a hard time going to different churches. I stuck with a friend in one for a while, a good while, actually, over a year, because I'm the kind I like to stick, but I was never fully comfortable there. And then I left there, and I went here, I went there, and then the next thing you know, I'm in another church. I'm trying to stick it. I'm fine with the pastor. I like the music. I mean, even coming to hear Christian music, contemporary worship for the first time. What? Loved it. Just all I remember is hymns, bringing in the chief. No, Christian music, that was fabulous, so I loved it. But anyway, where was I going? Okay, I'm trying. I got 4 months into this church, and I'm like the pastor, the music's okay, enjoy a lot of. But if they're not the most unfriendly lot of people, that's the only way you can say unfriendly. I tried Bible studies, felt unwelcome. I tried everything because I want somewhere to stick. So I'm sitting ready for church one Sunday morning, and I'm like, yes, you are going, you're going. I'm ready to go there. And I'm not feeling it. And then I'm like, wait a minute. I've been telling my friend Jenny that I'm going to check out Midtown one of these days because Mark is the worship pastor there. So, and I said, I think today's the day. And I've been here ever since. I just was at home the minute I got here. This is where I was supposed to be, and I knew it.
My hunch is we would never have guessed that your story held those tragedies.
Really?
Because of the smile on your face and the joy that just comes out of you. What happened? I mean, in all honesty, what happened? I mean, this was hard to dig up for a reason. And
yes. I think, especially the last couple years, like I said, when I first started here, I can even remember thinking, somebody here or there said something to somebody about, well, yeah, I've lost 2 kids. I'm like, wow, how do you do it? And I'm like, at that point in time, I remember I said, well, I feel like the Lord's got me as good with as it's going to get, and I'm never going to know why, maybe when I get to heaven, But then when you said to me, I told you I was so amazed at how hard this was. And it occurred to me that I had really finally put it to rest, I guess is the word. And you said, what do you attribute that to? And it took me a few minutes of thinking, and I think it's the only thing I think over the last couple of years, I have really come to understand God's sovereignty, and makes all the difference, and that's what I'm attributing it to. If he is who he says he is, and if he is in control, which I firmly believe he is, and if he does only want good for me, everything is for a reason. We live in a fallen world, but my God is good. And he asks me, or tells me all through his word, to trust him, to not be afraid. And I think I got it. That's the only thing I can say. I think I got it, and I finally just let my past go. I mean, totally. To where, like I say, I was shocked. I'm like, where'd that sucker go? I used to be able to pull it out and play with it all the time. And I had to dig deep. I had to dig deep.
What does it mean to trust God to you?
For me, to trust him is to, gosh, how do you explain trust? As something happened, I guess my attitude is, don't get me wrong, I have crap days, I have crap weeks, excuse the French. But the thing is, you know, if somebody says, oh, how would you? Oh, it's crappy. It was really crappy. And I can tell you, and my friends will tell you, I can tell you, this, and this. But if you let me get to the end of it, the only way I know how to explain it is, no matter what kind of day or week or moment I've had, I know that I know that I know everything's going to be okay. It's going to be okay, no matter what kind of crap. I trust him. And we're going to have rough days in this world. I mean, we live in a fallen world. But I just know with all my heart, I'm okay. And it's going to be okay.
I asked you a question yesterday that you said I may not like your answer. The why question. If someone was to ask you, well, why then did this happen?
Why it happened?
How would you answer the why question?
Okay, why this happened. I asked that question for so many years that I truly have given up on the why. How would why? I guess my pat answer now would be because we live in a fallen world. Things happen. Our lives are planned out. I don't see the big picture. God does. And I just have to trust. There's that word again. Trust that it was for a purpose and for a reason. God didn't stop it. He allowed it. I'm not even saying he caused it. But he knew it was going to happen. So I just have to trust. I don't know. He's bigger than me.
I think a lot of us want to find the answer to the why question. They find the comfort in the answer. And you told me yesterday that the why question is almost one that you don't entertain anymore.
No, I don't. I don't know, like this, it throws me. I don't know why. I just know it's okay. You know, I don't know God's mind. The why, I just really... Did I give you an answer yesterday? Because why?
Well, kind of, you didn't. Yeah, you kind of said I don't answer that question because
Yeah.
how can you really truly know the answer to the question?
Yeah, God knows. I don't know.
So, sitting in this room are stories, or possibly soon to be stories like yours, stories of tragedy, what appears to be hopeless, and yet you found hope. What is just a word of encouragement you would give to your church family?
When you're walking through it, it's so hard to find hope. Just cling to the Lord. I think the fact that I have come to realize, which I never gave much thought to, about living in a fallen world. We all go through things, and it isn't to say it's not painful, because it is, but yet somehow it's going to all work out in the end. When you're going through it, it's easy for somebody to say it'll work out in the end, and truly that's not what the person wants to hear, really. When you're in it at that moment, so often there is nothing, I don't think, that can help you except the Lord. Just cry out to the Lord and just keep hanging on. And it may be by a thread, I'm sure. But I would say, if you're going through something, I guess I can only say this for me. If anybody in my church family or anybody I meet would ever have to go through anything that I went through, whether it be divorce, turning your back on God, God forbid death of a child, or any of this, or struggling with a husband, a family member with any kind of alcohol or addictions or anything, I would say, please feel free to talk to me. Be willing to share your problems. I surely cannot fix anybody's, but if it's something I've already walked through, I sure can stand beside you and hold your hand and walk through you with it. But yeah, just lean on the Lord, really. And that's so easy for me to say now, but back then I couldn't say it.
And it's really cool to even hear you say it. And I know you mean it. It's,
yes.
So my last question, we got two songs we're going to be singing, The Great I Am and No Longer Slaves. These are songs that you requested.
Yeah, they are.
Tell us just real briefly what these songs mean to you.
Well, No Longer a Slave to Fear. The first time I heard it, I thought, in all honesty, yeah, that's me. I mean, how many times, I even Googled, how many times does the Bible tell us not to fear? And you often say, there are certain things you can Google. Oh, no, way too many answers, but I do know it says many, many times in there, do not fear, do not be afraid, And I feel like I've gotten there. Now, I'm sounding like tomorrow something may happen and I'd be crying on one of y'all's shoulders, But this is how I feel right now. I don't feel fearful. And I consider that a blessing. And then The Great I Am, oh, golly. For whatever reason, once I really dug in the last few years to studying the Bible, reading and learning how to study, I feel like, thanks to you, really digging, you can't explain it, I know I can't. It's just my favorite name for him. To me, it says it all. I am. It's all of it. I am. And that's who he is, the great I am.
I really appreciate, as I'm sure we all do, you sharing with us and taking the time
You're more than welcome.
to dig through that. is an encouragement to me. Let me pray and invite the band to come up to close us out. Father God, we give you so much thanks for your daughter and our sister, and she represents me, and she represents those in this room. Her story has details in it that maybe ours won't carry, but you've done a work in her, a work that resembles your son. All I really can say is thank you. Thank you for bringing her here to this family, for this story, for loving her through the ups and downs. And I just ask that this morning that your son would be revealed and made known even more with the words that have been spoken. We love you and we praise you. In your son's name.
Amen.